Hi, folks. This is Coach Rich, Endurance Nation. Welcome to tonight's Coach Chat. I'm talking slowly because I'm getting my notes up. Tonight's Coach Chat. Tonight is July 8th, and I got back from Ironman Coeur d'Alene was last weekend, so I got back from Coeur d'Alene on. So I was at Coeur d'Alene, did my Four Keys talk on Friday at the Coeur d'Alene uh, um, resort right by the race site. Was on the course during the bike course on my motorcycle. Was on the run course, and then I came back on Tuesday. I've been processing triathlon season roadmaps. I've been looking at race reports. I've been doing race report podcasts. But what I saw at Ironman Coeur d'Alene will be the subject of the next two coach chats I will have. It was a very, very windy day. So tonight I'm going to talk about considerations for racing a windy Ironman bike course. And then, sorry folks, but I saw lots of drafting on the course. So that is going to be my my topic for next week. So if you're listening to this via podcast, this is the first in a series. Tonight I'll be talking about racing a windy Ironman bike course. Next week we'll be drafting. I'm videoing this also. I'm in a chat window with my folks, so at some point I will probably turn off the audio so I can go over and answer questions from my athletes. So racing in the wind. We have a lot of stuff on our website about how to race a hilly bike course. We can talk about dividing the hill up into the entrance, the body, the crest, the downhill. We can talk normalized power, FTP, goal watts, what percentage you should be riding at, variability index, cadence, gearing, compact crank, what cassette. We have tons and tons of resources about how to ride a hill. And when you're on that hill, it might not seem like it, but the hill will eventually end. Okay, you might be on a half mile, 1 mile, 10 mile, 20 mile climb, but it will eventually end, and it's usually easy to identify when you're on a hill. I'm on a hill. I can see the top. It's going to end. I need to do X and don't do Y for the length of this climb. But the wind, you don't really see it. Number one, you don't see it. You feel it, you don't see it, and you don't know when it's going to end or when it's going to change. And so the primary feature of racing Ironman on a windy bike course is that if you're doing a little bit or a lot of bit of the wrong thing, you could potentially be doing that wrong thing for a very long time. Okay? Two considerations there. One is the dog on a leash effect, I call it, right? If you go walk your dog, you put him on a leash, and he instantly feels something holding him back, so he pulls against that. Okay, so your natural instinct when you're faced with a headwind is to push against that headwind. Okay, but like I said, if you push a little or a lot, you don't know when that headwind is going to end, and that cumulative effect of you riding too hard into a headwind. Number one, it's very easy to ride to tell how too hard you're riding unless you have power. And three, you don't know when that's going to end or if it is going to end. The second consideration are there are bike courses out there that are known to be windy. Ironman Coeur d'Alene was not typically one of them. But what's more important about whether a course is windy or not is how the nature of the course and the orientation of the road sets you up to be into a headwind or a tailwind for a long time. I own, in the Endurance Nation coaching space, I own everything that's related to Ironman Coeur d'Alene and Ironman Arizona. And the primary characteristics of those two bike courses is a long out and back. Okay, Ironman Arizona, the Beeline Highway is about 9 miles out, 9 miles back. Ironman Coeur d'Alene, you're on the highway, it's about 15 to 17 miles out and back. Ironman, both of those are gradually uphill, but the net gain on the Ironman Coeur d'Alene bike course on the out is much greater than the gain on the Arizona course. And so Ironman Coeur d'Alene has the additive riding into a headwind while you're climbing, which is something else I will talk about. Okay, so how do we execute a hilly, a windy Ironman bike? Number one consideration is what is your goal on the bike? Your goal is not to put up the fastest bike split, is to put up the best bike split that's good for you to set up the run. I'm not talking about how to ride a faster bike split on a windy course, although that will naturally happen if you follow the guidance that I'm going to give you. Understand that everything we talk about here with our athletes is about riding your could split, your should split, not your could split, and your should bike split is a split which sets up the run. Okay? So having established what our goal of your Ironman bike leg is to set up the run, how do we race into or with a windy bike course? Very simple. You ignore the wind altogether. Okay? You don't ride a little bit harder or a lot harder into a headwind, and you don't come off the gas a little or a lot in a tailwind, because you don't know how long you'll be in that wind, and you are, if I told you to ride X watts above your goal watts into a headwind, if that headwind lasts for 2 minutes or 50 minutes, those are two very different propositions. Okay, so from a pacing standpoint, it's very, very important that you ignore the wind, not riding harder into a headwind and not coming off the gas with a tailwind. Okay, so let's now talk about body position considerations and equipment considerations for riding in a windy Ironman bike course, and then let's talk about hills and wind on an Ironman bike course. Okay. The stronger the wind, the larger a stronger wind, especially if it's a headwind, means a higher airspeed, and therefore the opportunities for having your aerodynamics dialed in and being as aero as possible increase, and the consequences of you not being aerodynamic and not being smart about your body position also increase. Okay, and I see this every year at Ironman Arizona. I see lots of athletes on the second and third laps. They're tired, they're going into a headwind, and they're sitting up and they're creating a great big sail. Okay, there's a couple things. There's three things that are going to take you out of your aerodynamic riding position on a triathlon bike on a windy course. Number one is winds and specifically crosswinds. You have your cycling skill set, I have my cycling skill set, you have your perspective of what a strong crosswind is, I have mine, and at some point we all reach some combination of how hard the wind is blowing and where it's coming from, that we all start to feel sketchy and unsafe, and we start coming out of the aero bars, get on the hood so that we can feel safer. Whatever that squirrely point is for you, that's fine, but just when you do come out of the aero bars, don't sit up like this, just go like this. Okay, always. So all you're doing is moving your hands so that you can gain more control, but you're still staying as aero as possible. Okay, so that's changes in body position as a function of winds and crosswinds. Next is when you're climbing. Okay, I was on the motorcycle at Ironman Coeur d'Alene 2014, and what I saw on the first sets of hills on the highway, mica grade, or on the plateau, which is rolling after mica grade, is everyone has a miles per hour at which they say, okay, I'm on a hill, I'm under 13, 14, I'm just going to sit up because I'm climbing, and whenever I climb, I sit up in the hoods. What was different about Coeur d'Alene is you're climbing up that hill at 13, but you've got a headwind coming at you that was at 17 and maybe 20 or 22. Therefore, your airspeed is well north of 30, and therefore the aerodynamic cost of you climbing in the hoods, vice in the aero bars, offsets, in my opinion, the increased comfort, maybe the increased power that you would get by coming out of the aero bars and going into the hoods. Okay, we all know that climbing in the hoods, it kind of sucks. I mean, climbing in the aero bars kind of sucks. Everyone is more powerful and it feels better. It feels more natural. You can put out more watts when you sit up on the hoods. But we would like you, just in general, we would like you to consider doing some climbing in your aero bars, because generally climbing, because it's more difficult. It's if you go from the aero bars to the hoods, you're likely to put out more watts than you should be. If I keep you in the aero bars as much as possible, especially on the early parts of climbs, you are less likely to spike your watts, i.e. the aero bars on a climb are like a governor that keep you from being stupid. But if you find yourself on a hill into a headwind, understand that now this aerodynamic component that you're not used to accounting for or being aware of on most climbs, there is an aerodynamic component now, and now you would be better off by maintaining as much of your aero position as possible, whether that's in the aero bars or coming out of the hoods, or going into the hoods but staying very low. And the third consideration that brings people out of aero bars is having worked yourself too hard on the front half of the bike course, so that you are tired and fatigued and you just sit up because you're just done. Okay? Hate to break it to you folks, but every Ironman bike course gets harder as the days go longer. Okay? Heat increases, wind increases, your I'm fed up with the bike coefficient increases, and if you are not smart in the front third of the Ironman bike course and hold some energy back, you won't have anything. You won't have that energy to spend on the back end of the course when it gets much harder. And one of the physical expressions that I see of that is people sitting up out of the aero bars a lot in the last 30 to 20 miles of the Ironman bike course, especially on a course like Ironman Arizona, on the out and back on the third loop, sometimes on the second loop. Okay, so by you pacing the first quarter to the first third of your Ironman bike correctly, you hold energy back, which helps you be more likely to keep a good aerodynamic riding position later on the day when the winds pick up. Okay. Next consideration is equipment on the bike on a windy Ironman bike course. The standard Endurance Nation setup of a bike from front to rear is aero helmet. Your aero helmet is it's a relatively affordable means that returns a large aerodynamic benefit. Okay, so aero helmet, a torpedo mount race bottle, water bottle, being smart with what bottles you put where on your frame. Generally, a bottle on your down tube is a better aerodynamic choice than a bottle on your seat tube. A bento box, because it cleans up the aerodynamics. A bento box cleans up the aerodynamic drag at the back of your stem. And then finally, resisting the urge to put a lot of stuff behind your saddle. If you do put it back behind your saddle, you put it low so that it's in the wind shadow of your legs. And wrapped around all of this is that you are hydrating and feeding yourself off the course, so you don't have to carry lots of bottles and lots of other junk hanging off your bike. You have a plan that has you living off the course, so that you're not starting. You don't need to have the ability to carry 4 bike bottles. Maybe you only need to carry 1 or 2 because you're feeding yourself off the course. You have less stuff hanging off the bike. That's a more aerodynamic setup. Okay. Next is, okay, but then what everyone talks about on a windy bike course is wheels. All right. A front race wheel and a rear race wheel. What catches the wind the most, or rather the wheel that has the largest effect on the handling of the bike in winds, is your front wheel. Okay, and it's just basic physics, but the smaller you are, the more you will be blown around on the course. The larger you are, the less you'll be blown around on the course. Or I should say, the larger you are, the higher the wind speed it will require to make you feel sketchy on the bike course. But then that wind is applied to the front wheel, and that's what has you moving around. Okay, so net is small athletes and or athletes who don't have a lot of experience or perspective with aggressive crosswinds should be riding a lower profile front race wheel. Larger athletes can go with a larger profile, more deep dish front wheel, because you've got more mass to resist being blown from side to side. But then each of those groups, small, big, not so aero front wheel, very aero front wheel, we all have our own individual squirreliness coefficient, i.e. combination of winds coming left, right, front to back, at which we don't feel safe. And so you need to do your smart guy, smart gal thing to pick that combination of front wheel that works best for you. Rear wheel has less of a steering effect on the bike, and so our guidance for all of our Endurance Nation athletes is to race with a wheel cover. It's $89 2 sheets of plastic that you slap on your rear wheel, turns it into a disc, and if your race day looks windy, you can pop that thing off. I train and race with a super budget 2010 Power Tap wheel built into a head Belgium rim that's got a bazillion miles on it, and I race by just slapping a wheel cover on that thing. Okay, but so at the end of the day, that's it, right? So it's about, from a pacing standpoint, we ignore the wind, meaning we don't ride harder into it, and we don't come off the gas with a tailwind. If you find yourself coming out of the aero bars, you are going to stay low, go to the hoods. on, if you find yourself on a climb into a headwind, you're going to be aware of the fact that even though the dial says that you're going 10 and you always come out of the aero bars at 10, you're in a headwind, so your airspeed is actually close to 30, and so maybe I should consider climbing in the aero bars on this hill. And finally, you're going to choose the equipment that's right for you, which makes your bicycle as aerodynamic as possible, and you are aware that the item on your bicycle that most affects its handling on a windy bike course is the front wheel, and you're going to choose, rent, borrow the best front wheel for you given your combination of mass and your squirreliness coefficient, which I just made up. Okay? Folks, this concludes the podcast portion of this podcast. I'm going to turn it over now. I'm now going to go into my chat room and answer questions from my athletes. Okay, folks, any questions for me? While I'm waiting for questions to be asked, folks on my team, Rich and Patrick are I like how I talk about myself in the third person. We are in the process of a Manhattan project of creating race guide pages where, for example, right now I'm working on my Ironman Coeur d'Alene race guide page in the wiki, and I'm consolidating everything that we have related to Ironman Coeur d'Alene, Four Keys talks, race reports, podcasts, blog posts, everything we can think of. We're putting that all in the on this Ironman Coeur d'Alene race guide page to create one massive Ironman Coeur d'Alene resource for you, and then we're going to be pointing our Ironman Coeur d'Alene people towards that in anticipation of 2015. So I'm creating this page for 2014. Patrick's going to take that and use that as a template for Mont Tremblant, Lake Placid, Florida. Those are the races he owns. I own Wisconsin, Lake Tahoe, Chattanooga, Arizona, and hopefully with enough work we can get those built on the front end of the race so that you can start to use them now. But it's just a lot of work. So my hard drive right now is melting as I'm taking my Ironman Coeur d'Alene Four Keys talk, which are monster files, and I'm processing those to put those internally for you. So while I was talking, some people have asked questions. Is a smaller wheel worth the reduced aerodynamic benefit to have a more stable ride on downhills or a crosswind? First of all, Sean, sorry. Back in, I think it was maybe 2008, 2009, some cyclists at MIT did a lot of time in the wind tunnel, and they tested lots of things like aerodynamic benefit of a front wheel, of a race helmet, of a bento box, the aerodynamic cost of the straw that's on your aero bottle, bottles behind the seat, saddlebag behind the seat, all that stuff. And what they found was that that a front wheel does not have, or okay, yes, a front race wheel does benefit you, but it's also massively expensive, and you can achieve similar aerodynamic benefits by wearing a race helmet, by paying attention to bottle placement, by not having bottles all over your bike. So it's very the culture of the sport is what what whiz bang car, what whiz bang aero carbon widget can I sell you? Wheels are typically at the top of the list of things that people feel they have to buy, and so so our requirement is that you purchase power first before you invest in fancy race wheels. This is all to say that I would not even start getting in with my wallet, maybe with your wallet. I wouldn't start getting into a place where I have a selection of race wheels that I'm pulling off a shelf because at the end of the day, the difference between a 404 or an 808 on the front is very little in terms of savings, time savings on the course, but they're just massively expensive. So having said all that, that's my assistant coach, sorry. I always recommend that athletes buy and choose a front race wheel that they're going to get the most use out of, the most bang for their buck, given their size, the nature of the courses that they ride, their comfort with crosswinds, etc. So, for example, I would almost never recommend that a sub 130 pound rider buy an 808 front wheel, because if they get put onto a windy course with that 808 front wheel, that's going to be not a good thing. Okay, so so I would recommend that athlete buy a smaller profile front wheel so that they get more use out of it. It's more useful across a wide variety of courses. Sean says again, I was talking more about having control issues above 35 miles per hour because of a crosswind, vice a Shimano which has no crosswind footprint but may not be aerodynamically fast. I would say, how many triathlon bike courses are there out there that you'll find yourself going faster than 35 miles an hour into a crosswind? And of those courses, how long will you be at that speed? What is your comfort at being at that speed into a crosswind? And then choose your wheel based on your answers to those questions. Okay. Mike says, hey coach, even pros admit riding into the wind for long periods sucks. Any tips on how to mentally find some happy place? For me, when I'm racing, and this is the mentality I want you, the Endurance Nation athlete or the Endurance Nation fan, to adopt, is you as the smart, I know how to race, disciplined, I know it's all about execution athlete. I want you to race on challenging bike courses. I want you to race in wind, heat, hills, crosswind, rain, sleet, snow, hail. I want the course to throw everything at you because I know that you know how to handle it and you will make fewer mistakes. And so my happy place, and the happy place I encourage you to have, is achieved by watching the mistakes that are being made by everyone around you. Okay? So when you're in that headwind and you're at watts X and you know that watts X is exactly the right thing and you're aerodynamic and you're doing the right thing and you're getting passed by people who are probably less aerodynamic than you are, meaning they're putting out higher watts, and or they are heavier than you, they're putting out higher watts. You are surrounded by people who are doing the wrong thing, and that should be a happy place reinforcement that you are doing the right thing. Okay? And so really what I would encourage you to do is just put yourself in a happy place by focusing on execution and knowing that you're doing the right thing, and then watching everyone else around you do the wrong thing and gain some confidence from that. Okay? All right, folks, thanks for your time. I'll be back next week for a very controversial video and podcast on drafting. I hope I can single-handedly fix the drafting problem in the Ironman space. Okay? Thanks, folks. Catch you later. Folks on the team, I'll see you inside in the forums. Bye.